enhanced subsidies for the Affordable Care Act are expiring soon. Lawmakers are set to vote on the subsidies. Joining us to discuss is Angie Wong, Republican strategist and political columnist, and we have Mike Leon, a host of Can We Please Talk podcast and director of strategy at the Free and Equal Elections Foundation. So Mike, I'll start with you. What are your thoughts on the likelihood here of lawmakers arriving at a plan that will get the necessary 60 votes before the subsidies expire?
0%, Don. That's it. That's my answer. No, good to see everybody. Angie, good to see you as always. I mean, if you just look at what John Barrasso said the other day about, as he was pushing back at Democrats in the House saying they want a 3-year extension, some people want permanent resolution with that, then if we're that far off where we're blaming each other already from this, we're not going to come to some type of resolution before the Christmas break. So the subsidies will expire before we get into the 26th fiscal year. So if we're just basing it off of the words of people in Congress, I know sometimes that's a little tough to do because they say one thing and then they mean something else. I would say we're not going to reach a deal. But look, this is, Don, you and I have been talking about this for the past, couple months since we had the government shut down. I said we'd be back here because of the fight for this and the expiration of these subsidies. There's going to be a lot of people that are going to lose health care insurance. But people like me, I'll just put myself into this mix. You know, I'm a private contractor. I don't have a W-2 job. I rely on this system to be able to get health care benefits for my daughter, one who is on the spectrum and has special needs. So like, these are things that are important to somebody just like me, using myself as an example. So to see the members of Congress, in both chambers, House and Senate, battling like this, you know, in the public forum and not actually talking to each other about a resolution for this is something that's troubling to me for sure.
So Angie, like Mike said, millions of people could be impacted here. How do you feel about the situation at hand?
I actually agree with Mike. I think it's going to be 0% that this thing passes mid-December. You would need 13 senators to cross the aisle to join this. And it's a very highly unpopular bill for Republicans anyway. This is the Obamacare that nobody wants to extend, although it almost is necessary. And Donald Trump came out to say that a few days ago, to say we may actually do need to extend this because it will affect over 20 million Americans who do right now subscribe to this plan. And if they don't by December 15th renew their premiums, they jump up and it could be double what they're currently paying. So President Trump's not going to allow that to happen. But at the same time, he knows that Republicans are not very favorable of extending something that was meant to be a temporary subsidy. And there's all the points that we can go down. But ultimately, nobody wants to just put a Band-Aid over something as important as health care and insurance for all Americans. So they want more time. And I think that's what's going to happen. We may have to extend it for maybe a couple of weeks, a couple of months, just so that President Trump and his team can hash out a better plan. And I think he's already touted Trump care all over online anyway. So I'm looking forward to seeing that.
Okay, Mike, can you just respond to this point that Angie brought up? Aren't these subsidies, the pandemic era subsidies, supposed to be temporary? That's never meant to be permanent anyway?
Correct. Yeah, Angie's right. I mean, look, the problem with fixing healthcare is that the system is bloated, convoluted, and there's too much power with the insurance providers. Let me use myself as an example, Don. You know, when I was a W-2 employee getting healthcare insurance, and then let's say I get let go from an employer, your COBRA benefits last year, I believe, anywhere between 15 to 18 months. It's almost double, sometimes triple the price, but you get the same level of coverage. When you lose a job like that, and there are millions of people like me that are in the contract, you know, freelance space, when they're going to the healthcare marketplace, the Obamacare, ACA stuff, a lot of the times they won't get the same coverage that they would get from a W-2 thing, right? So they rely on some of these things that we've been talking about. But again, as Angie said, these were temporary Band-Aids that were never meant to be a long-term remedy. So the Trump administration, and by the way, every administration has had this same failure. Even with Obamacare coming in, the mandates that were part of that should have never been part of that. You know, my wife's a medical secretary and has educated me on a lot of these things that have happened given the different offices that she's worked at. Like, the issue is that the insurance providers have too much power. And a lot of people don't have that W-2 employer insurance. And then you get into the coverage of insurance. So what do we do, right? What does the Trump administration do? They're up against the wall because they're meeting a deadline where you're going to have 22 million people by the CBO's estimate that could lose insurance or could have people that have premiums that are higher in 26. But then the other part of it is the system's broken. So how do you fix the system while also giving the temporary Band-Aid and relief so people don't lose any of these ability to take advantage of these programs, and they don't lose, all of their health care all at once in one fell swoop? It's an unenviable position for any administration. Remove the person who's in 1600 Pennsylvania right now. It hasn't been tackled. It hasn't been fixed. We can go back and finger point a bunch of things, but at the end of the day, the system is bloated. And I think the Trump administration is trying to balance, how do we extend this, not have another government shutdown under my watch, and then also fix, like what Angie said, if it's Trump care, of course, he has to add his name in there. But if it's something like that, that actually fixes the system of how we all get health insurance and get the correct coverages for what we need, then we got to see what that looks like in 26 and beyond.
Angie, I just want to build on Mike's point here. Nearly 8 in 10 Americans want to renew the tax credits, according to a Kaiser Family Foundation poll. Do you think it's worthwhile for Republicans to just extend the ACA subsidies?
Oh, well, again, I don't think we have much of a choice. We're talking less than 2 weeks before everyone has to decide what they're going to do with their health care. And if they don't, the premiums will jump up. That's always been the warning. So I think it almost is a non-negotiable at this point, where Republicans will have to come together and extend it, but just by a very, very short period of time. I can't imagine it to be more than a year, although the midterms play a big, big role in this, because quite honestly, if I were the strategist on this, I don't want to deal with this issue come the midterm. I don't want healthcare insurance to be part of that conversation. There are plenty of other things that we can talk about to win on the midterms, but healthcare is certainly not a winning issue for Republicans. Although, look, Trump is doing a great job. He's negotiating with a bunch of pharmaceutical companies and getting the favorable nation prices down for a lot of our popular drugs. I think he's going to bring Trump RX online at some point in 2026. So I'm interested in seeing what that's about. But I agree with Mike. We need to stop just funneling money into these healthcare insurance companies to then tell us what we can do with our own medical plans. If we could cut out the middleman, I think a lot of Americans would be very, very happy to take on their own responsibility and create their own health plan with the money that is provided by the government to do so.
Mike, should we put the subsidies directly into the pockets of consumers, which would allow patients to decide what to buy, and it creates market competition?
Yeah. I mean, the simple answer, Don, is yes. I do agree with Angie's overall point. And again, I can't stress this enough, because I think a lot of the times when people watch these panels, they don't hear, they hear people give anecdotal evidence, right? As opposed to what's actually happening in my life. Because I'm going through this, Don, like right now, right? Like I went through the process of a W-2 employer's insurance and what that's being taken out pre-tax of your check, to now a contract employee and actually having to go through the Obamacare website and seeing what Fidelis covers that Cigna actually covers. Fidelis doesn't cover it. So when you switch your healthcare provider, unfortunately, to quote Barack Obama, you don't get to keep your doctor, well, like he said back in the day, because your doctor's not going to take that certain level of coverage. So to Angie's point, we do need to give people the option to be able to take the healthcare plan that they want and that they need for their families, given their needs of whether it be the children or whether it be the parents, and give them money in their pockets that they can be able to use for that. Now, I know companies obviously set up HSAs and all of this type of money that you can put aside to be able to, almost save for a rainy day in case you need a procedure, things like that. And there's more coverage afforded to these insurance providers. But again, the biggest thing in all of this that I always come back to is, and it's funny to me that the Trump admin hasn't been more front-facing on this, specifically because they brought in Doge to cut everything that's bloated in government spending. Well, why wouldn't we look at insurance providers, and especially at this industry? Because this industry, I mean, we see a high-profile murder of one of the CEOs of this industry on trial right now with Luigi Mangione. That was front and center of talking about the healthcare debate in this country. why did that murder happen, right? We can get into the underlying layers that are going to be discovered in the trial, but the actual issue is about the way people get healthcare insurance in this country. And there's millions of people that don't have it. There's millions of people that are underinsured. I'm not even talking about those folks right now. The system is bloated, and I would like for there to be a fix. And the fix, I think, will come, like Angie said, you don't want to talk about this too much at the midterms, but the fix will come by putting money back in Americans' pocket and giving them the control to be able to go out there and get their insurance and have the freedom to exercise what it is that they want to do with their healthcare plan needs.
Angie, could Trump Care be a win for patients and consumers?
I think so. Look, the guy's pretty busy right now, right? He's taking care of a lot of world wars and solving lots of problems everywhere. I know he's going to get to this. Mike, I'm just so happy that we can have this dialogue here on TV, because that's what's going to be happening on the Senate floor in a couple of days. And I'm glad that these issues are coming arise because it affects all Americans. We're looking at least 45 million Americans that somehow are part of these plans that are currently they're currently enrolled in these ACA plans. So, this is not something that you can not talk about because it's a huge, huge portion of Americans, and there should be a solution. Look, we've solved a lot of things. We're able to take very difficult situations and find solutions for them. I think this one we can solve. I think because the Trump administration is working with the pharmaceuticals, is working with doctors, and should be working, as Mike said, with the health insurance companies. I think we can solve this. And remember, we're with the Art of the Deal president. He would love to solve this problem domestically.
Mike, I want to know where you stand on Trump Care.
Well, I'll piggyback on something Angie just said there. First off, Angie, good to see you. We could have just done this together in person since we're both down here in Florida. But what's funny to me is that you said Trump Care. Why did you say Trump Care, Don? Because he loves putting things, his name in front of it and saying, I can solve it. I will do it. So it would be a huge win for him to be able to tout that he solved this issue. And he's, by the way, in his first administration, he told Republicans, if you recall, he was saying all the time adamantly, this is something we need to solve. He never liked Obamacare. He always wanted to repeal and replace it, but they never had a plan for it. We're here now 6, 7, 8 years later. We still don't have a plan for it, but he does know the importance of it. It's a losing issue, to what Angie said earlier, for Republicans, because now we've had two different Trump administrations sandwiched in between a Biden one, and we haven't truly solved the healthcare crisis, which is what we've been talking about across this panel. So I think he understands the importance of it. The naming convention, forget about that just for a second. I think he understands that there could be a huge victory at the beginning of 26 whether we extend the subsidies or we figure out some type of intermediate 90, 120-day rollout plan for Americans with respect to healthcare so that you don't lose the health insurance. It's something that people that are going to be in some of these purple districts in the House and Senate, they can take with them on the road and say, look, we did do this for you guys. We are championing that. We are the party of healthcare. Democrats shut down over healthcare. We actually went out there and solved it. I can't believe I'm giving the Republicans the strategy in the playbook, but they could do that. And I think Trump understands that. I know Angie knows that Trump understands that. And this is something that I'm sure it's top of mind for the president. It's top of mind for John Thune. It's top of mind for Speaker Johnson, and giving that information to the president that this is a losing issue if we don't do something about this.
Angie, your final comments here. What's at the core of the problems? High premiums, not a lot of choice, poor outcomes for patients' health. What's at the core of the issue?
The core of the issue for Obamacare is that it was never perfect. It never got fixed. And it was never affordable, like the name says, affordable health care. It is not at all, because if the government has to continually subsidize it and write blank checks to it, well, it's not a winning formula. A lot of this comes from the fact that there's not a competitive marketplace, like you brought up. The government restrictions make it impossible for all healthcare insurers to jump in. If we loosen that, or maybe do separate plans, I'm not sure what the actual answer is, because we would have to do such a deep dive into it. But you have to make the marketplace a lot more competitive state by state, so that other insurers can come in and be part of this, or just get rid of all the health care insurance altogether and do a single pay plan for all Americans. So these are the hard things that has to be discussed on the Senate floor, the House floor, and also in the Oval Office. But, these things change. We're modernizing every single day. Technology, medicine, everything is moving so fast. We look outside the U.S., we see models that we can replicate. I think you almost have to give it that allotted time to go through and see what's going to be best for us. And I would love to have Elon Musk and other technologists as part of this conversation, because they'll be able to see forward. We're stuck in this really old place where healthcare insurance and, submitting paperwork and all this stuff, maybe all that can go away with the right minds involved in this conversation.
Well, all right, Mike, Angie, thank you for having this conversation with us. Pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you, Don. Good to see you.
Republican Matt Van